The Mississippi River ran high that spring of 1853, its muddy waters swelling over banks and threatening to swallow everything in its path, including Lily Morgan's riverboat, the Wandering Rose. She stood at the helm, knuckles white against the wheel as she navigated the treacherous current, her keen eyes scanning the shoreline. The boat had been her father's legacy, and now it was all she had left in the world. What she didn't know was that she wasn't alone on these waters, and some men saw a woman captain as easy prey. Lily was 24, tall and lithe with auburn hair that refused to stay pinned beneath her wide-brimmed hat. The sun had kissed her face with freckles, making her appear younger than her years, but anyone who knew her understood that behind those emerald eyes lay the determination of a woman who'd weathered far more than most twice her age. The Wandering Rose was a modest vessel, not one of those fancy paddle steamers that carried wealthy passengers up and down the Mississippi, but a sturdy trading boat that had kept Lily and her father alive for the past decade. After his passing 6 months ago, many had expected her to sell the boat and find herself a husband, but Lily had other plans. The river was in her blood. Today's journey was a simple one, at least it was supposed to be. She was delivering goods from St. Louis to a small settlement downriver, mostly farm equipment and dry goods that the settlers couldn't get elsewhere. The profits would be slim, but enough to keep her going for another month. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the river in hues of gold and amber, Lily noticed movement along the shoreline. 3 small boats had emerged from behind a bend in the river, cutting through the water with purpose, heading straight for the Wandering Rose. Even from a distance, she could make out the men aboard rough-looking fellows with bandanas covering the lower halves of their faces. "River pirates," she muttered under her breath. Stories of these men had spread up and down the Mississippi like wildfire. They attacked trading vessels, stealing cargo, and sometimes worse. A woman alone would be seen as an easy target. Lily's heart hammered against her ribs as she calculated her options. The current was too strong to outrun them, and there was nowhere to dock safely. She was alone, with only her father's old pistol tucked away in her cabin. Panic threatened to overwhelm her, but she fought it back. This boat was all she had, and she wouldn't surrender it without a fight. The lead boat drew closer, close enough for Lily to see the cold eyes of the man standing at its bow. He held a rifle casually in his hands, as if this was routine business for him. "Look what we have here, boys," he called out to his companions. "A pretty little thing trying to be a captain." Laughter erupted from the other boats, harsh and mocking. Lily's fingers inched toward the hidden compartment beneath the wheel where she kept her pistol. "Stand down, miss," the leader called. "We'll be taking that cargo, and maybe we'll let you walk away if you're smart about it." Lily opened her mouth to respond when a crack split the air, the unmistakable sound of a rifle shot. It hadn't come from the pirates, but from the shoreline to her right. The bullet hit the water just inches from the lead boat, sending up a spray that had the pirate leader ducking for cover. "I suggest you boys reconsider your plans," came a deep voice from the shore. Lily turned to see a man standing on the riverbank, rifle raised to his shoulder. He was tall, clad in trail-worn clothes and a dusty hat pulled low over his eyes. A horse stood behind him, reins loosely held in one hand while the other steadied his weapon. "This ain't your business, cowboy," the pirate leader snarled, though Lily noted he'd lowered himself further in his boat. "I'm making it my business," the stranger replied coolly. "There's 3 of you, one of her, and now one of me. Those odds just got a whole lot worse for you." The pirates seemed to hesitate, exchanging glances among themselves. The leader's eyes narrowed, calculating whether the stranger's threat was genuine. "I don't miss," the cowboy added, as if reading their thoughts. Next shot won't be a warning. Time seemed suspended as they all waited for someone to make a move. The pirates' boats drifted slightly in the current, and Lily held her breath. Finally, with a curse, the leader signaled to his men. "This ain't over," he spat, but he directed his companions to row back the way they had come. Only when the boats had disappeared around the bend did Lily release the breath she'd been holding. She guided the wandering rows closer to shore, where the stranger still stood, rifle now lowered but still in his hands. "You have my gratitude, sir," she called out. "Those men would have taken everything." The man tipped his hat back, revealing a face weathered by sun and wind, with eyes as blue as the summer sky. A scar ran along his jawline, and several days' worth of stubble darkened his chin. He couldn't have been much older than 30. "Owen Blackett," he introduced himself. "Seems like you could use someone to watch your back on these waters, madam." "Lily Morgan," she replied, "and I've been managing just fine until today." A slight smile curved his lips. "Clearly." Lily bristled at his tone but couldn't deny the truth of his words. If he hadn't appeared when he did, she didn't want to think about what might have happened. "Where are you headed?" he asked. "Settlement called Fisher's Landing, about a day's journey downriver." Owen nodded. "Mind if I accompany you?" "The river's edge is easier traveling than cutting through the woods, and I'm headed south myself." Lily hesitated. Taking on a stranger had its own risks, but the threat of the river pirates returning was greater. Besides, there was something in his steady gaze that inspired trust, though she'd be a fool to let her guard down completely. "Very well, Mr. Blackett. You can tie your horse to the stern rail. There's room enough, and I could use the extra set of eyes." Owen nodded, leading his horse down to the water's edge where Lily had guided the boat close enough to shore for him to board. Once aboard, he secured his horse, a handsome chestnut gelding, to the rail. "Been on the river long?" he asked, leaning his rifle against the cabin wall. "All my life," Lily replied. "My father captained this boat for 20 years before he passed. Now it's mine." "Sorry for your loss," Owen said, his voice genuine. "It's not common to see a woman running a riverboat alone." "A lot of things aren't common, Mr. Blackett." "Doesn't mean they shouldn't be done." He smiled at that, a real smile that transformed his face. "Fair enough, Miss Morgan." As the wandering rose continued its journey downriver, Lily found herself stealing glances at her unexpected passenger. He moved with the easy confidence of a man accustomed to handling himself in difficult situations. His clothes, while dusty from the trail, were well maintained, and the rifle he carried was clearly a prized possession, its wood stock polished from years of handling. "What brings you along the river, Mr. Blackett?" she asked as the afternoon wore on. Owen was quiet for a moment, as if weighing how much to share. "Been working as a scout and occasional lawman up north. Headed to New Orleans now. Got family business to attend to." "A lawman?" Lily raised an eyebrow. "You don't wear a badge?" "Not anymore," he said simply, in a tone that discouraged further questions on that topic. They lapsed into comfortable silence as the sun began to set. Lily decided to anchor for the night in a small inlet protected from the main current. It was her usual practice when traveling alone, safer than trying to navigate the treacherous waters in darkness. She prepared a simple meal from her supplies: beans, salt pork, and coffee, which they shared on the deck under a canopy of stars. Owen had offered to take the first watch, insisting that she get some rest. "Those pirates might think twice now, but men like that don't give up easily," he said, checking his rifle. "Best to stay alert." Lily wanted to argue but found herself stifling a yawn instead. The day's events had left her more exhausted than she'd realized. "Wake me in 4 hours," she instructed. "I'll take the second watch." Owen nodded, settling himself against the cabin wall with a clear view of both the river and the shoreline. Before retreating to her small cabin, Lily found herself pausing to look at him once more. There was something comforting about his presence, a steadiness that she hadn't realized she'd been missing since her father's death. "Thank you again, Mr. Blackett," she said softly. He tipped his hat in response, his eyes never leaving the darkened waters. The night passed without incident, and true to his word, Owen woke Lily for her watch. The exchange was brief, but she noticed the care he took to explain what sounds he'd heard and what movements he'd seen along the shore. Nothing threatening, just the usual nocturnal creatures going about their business. As dawn broke over the river, painting the water in shades of pink and gold, Lily found Owen already awake, brewing fresh coffee over the small stove in the galley. "Sleep well?" he asked, handing her a steaming cup. "Well enough," she replied. In truth, she'd slept better than she had in months, knowing someone else was keeping watch. "We should reach Fisher's Landing by midday if the current holds." They set off as the sun cleared the horizon, the wandering Rose cutting smoothly through the water. Owen proved himself useful, helping with some of the heavier work around the boat and keeping a vigilant eye on their surroundings. His presence allowed Lily to focus on navigation, which was particularly challenging in this stretch of river with its hidden sandbars and submerged logs. By mid-morning, Lily spotted something that made her blood run cold: a small boat, similar to those from yesterday, keeping pace with them along the shoreline, just visible through the trees. "Mr. Blackett," she called quietly, nodding toward the movement. Owen was at her side in an instant, his keen eyes narrowing as he tracked the boat. "Seems our friends from yesterday aren't so easily discouraged." "What do they want with my cargo?" Lily asked, frustration evident in her voice. "It's just farming equipment and dry goods, nothing worth killing over." "Men like that don't need much reason," Owen replied grimly. "They see something they want, they take it, and right now they want your boat." The boat shadowing them suddenly disappeared into a dense patch of riverside foliage. Lily tensed, her hands tight on the wheel. "There's a narrow passage coming up," she said. "The river branches around a small island. The main channel is to the left, but it's where they'd expect us to go." Owen considered this. "Can we navigate the right channel? It's trickier, shallower in parts and with more obstacles, but I know it well enough." "Then that's our play," he decided. "They'll be waiting for us in the main channel. We'll surprise them by taking the alternate route." Lily guided the wandering Rose toward the right channel as they approached the fork in the river. The boat dipped and swayed as they entered the narrower passage, the current stronger here as it forced its way through the confined space. "Stay low," Owen advised, positioning himself at the bow with his rifle ready. "If they realize what we're doing, they might try to cut across the island to intercept us." Lily nodded, hunching lower behind the wheel. The channel twisted through a dense stand of cypress trees, their gnarled roots reaching into the water like bony fingers. Navigating through required all her concentration and skill. They were halfway through the passage when a shout from the island confirmed Owen's prediction. The pirates had indeed spotted them and were racing across the narrow strip of land to intercept them at the channel's end. "Keep going," Owen called. "I'll handle them." Lily pushed the boat as fast as she dared through the treacherous waters. Ahead, she could see the channel widening as it rejoined the main river, and standing at that junction were two of the pirates, rifles raised. Owen fired first, his shot precise and controlled. It struck the ground at the pirates' feet, sending them scrambling for cover. He chambered another round smoothly, firing again before they could regain their composure. "I told you boys I don't miss," he called out. "That was me being polite. Next one finds flesh." The wandering rows burst out of the narrow channel into the open river, the momentum carrying them past the shoreline where the pirates had tried to ambush them. Lily saw the third man, their leader, running down the bank, shouting curses as his prey escaped. Owen kept his rifle trained on them until they were well out of range, then turned to Lily with a grim smile. "That'll keep them at bay for now, but they know where we're headed. Fisher's Landing isn't far, and they might try again before we get there." Lily nodded, her heart still racing from the chase. "I've dealt with difficult men before, Mr. Blackett, but never one so persistent." "There's something more at play here," Owen mused, scanning the shoreline as they continued downriver. Regular river pirates would have given up after being thwarted twice. These men are determined. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm not sure yet," he admitted, "but I intend to find out when we reach Fisher's Landing." The rest of their journey passed in tense vigilance, but they saw no further signs of the pirates. As promised, they reached Fisher's Landing by midday, a small but bustling settlement that served as a trading post for the surrounding farmlands. Lily guided the wandering rows to the crude dock that extended into the river, where several men were already waiting to help secure the boat and unload her cargo. Word of her arrival had clearly preceded her. "Miss Morgan," an older man greeted her as she stepped onto the dock. "Right on schedule, as always. Your father would be proud." "Thank you, Mr. Fisher," she replied with a smile. The aging trader had been a friend to her father for many years. Fisher's eyes shifted to Owen, who was disembarking behind her, leading his horse. "And who might this be?" "Owen Blackett," he introduced himself, extending a hand which Fisher shook firmly. "Just providing some additional security for Miss Morgan's journey." Fisher's bushy eyebrows rose. "Had trouble on the river, did you?" "Some unwanted attention from river pirates," Lily explained. "Mr. Blackett was kind enough to lend his assistance." Fisher's expression darkened. "Been hearing about those vermin causing problems up and down the river, becoming more organized of late too, not just random opportunists anymore." Owen's interest was piqued. "What have you heard exactly?" Fisher lowered his voice, glancing around to ensure they weren't overheard. "Word is there's someone new pulling the strings, someone with connections and ambition. They're not just hitting random boats anymore, they're targeting specific shipments." Lily exchanged a concerned look with Owen. "Mine was hardly valuable enough to warrant such attention." "Unless they weren't after your cargo," Owen suggested quietly. Fisher nodded in agreement. "The Wandering Rose is a fine boat, Miss Morgan, small enough to navigate the backwaters but sturdy enough for regular trade. It would be valuable to someone looking to expand their operations." The implication hung in the air between them. Lily felt a chill despite the warm spring day. "I need to unload my cargo and collect payment. Then perhaps we should discuss this further." "Come by my office when you're done," Fisher offered. "It's safer to talk there." As Fisher walked away to organize the unloading, Owen stayed close to Lily's side. "I don't like this," he murmured. "If someone's specifically targeting your boat, they won't stop just because we've reached Fisher's Landing." "I can't exactly abandon my livelihood because of some river thugs," Lily replied, though the concern was evident in her voice. "No," Owen agreed, "but we can make sure they understand the cost of coming after you is too high." His hand rested casually on his rifle, but there was nothing casual about the determination in his eyes. For the next hour, they supervised the unloading of the Wandering Rose's cargo. Owen remained vigilant, his eyes constantly scanning their surroundings while Lily handled the business transactions. When everything was unloaded and payment received, they made their way to Fisher's office, a small clapboard building overlooking the docks. Inside, Fisher was waiting with a pot of coffee and a serious expression. He closed the door firmly behind them before speaking. "I've been making some inquiries while you were busy," he said, pouring 3 cups of coffee. "The men who came after you match the description of a crew working for a man named Victor Rains." Owen's posture stiffened at the name. "I know Rains. He used to run guns to Indian territories up north before the authorities got too close. Didn't know he'd moved his operations to the river." "About 6 months ago," Fisher confirmed. "He's been building himself quite the little empire. Started with legitimate shipping, then branched out into less savory ventures." 6 months, Lily repeated, a cold realization washing over her. "That's when my father died." Fisher nodded gravely. "Your father was well respected on the river, Miss Morgan. His reputation for honesty and fair dealing was well known. I doubt he would have stood by while Rains established his operation. You think my father's death wasn't an accident?" It wasn't a question. The fever that had taken him had come on suddenly, violently, and had claimed him within days. "I can't say for certain," Fisher admitted, "but the timing is concerning." Owen's hand found Lily's shoulder, a steadying presence as this new possibility threatened to overwhelm her. She took a deep breath, pushing back against the tide of emotions threatening to engulf her. "What does this Rains want with my boat?" she asked, her voice remarkably steady. "The Wandering Rose has a reputation for reliability," Fisher explained. "It can access smaller tributaries that larger vessels can't navigate, making it perfect for smuggling operations. And with your father's good name attached to it, few would think to search it too thoroughly. So he wants to steal my boat for his illegal activities," Lily summarized, anger replacing her initial shock. "And he might have had something to do with my father's death." "It's possible," Fisher agreed cautiously, "but proving it would be difficult." Owen had been quiet, his mind clearly working through the implications. "Where does Rains operate from?" he finally asked. "He has a compound about a day's journey downriver," Fisher replied. "Built himself quite the fortress from what I hear. Most folks give it a wide berth." Lily set her coffee cup down with sudden determination. "Then that's where I'm going." Both men turned to her in surprise. "That would be extremely dangerous, Miss Morgan," Fisher cautioned. "I'm not suggesting I storm his compound alone," Lily clarified. "But if there's even a chance he had something to do with my father's death, I need to know. And I won't let him intimidate me off the river my father loved." Owen studied her for a long moment, his blue eyes intense. "You're either the bravest or the most foolhardy woman I've ever met." "Perhaps a bit of both," she admitted with a slight smile. "Well, you won't be going alone," Owen decided. "I have my own reasons for wanting to meet Victor Rains." Fisher looked between them, concern evident on his weathered face. "If you're determined to pursue this, you'll need more than courage and a single rifle. Rains has at least a dozen men working for him." "What do you suggest?" Owen asked. Fisher stroked his gray beard thoughtfully. "Stay here tonight. I know some people in town who have no love for Rains and his operation. By morning, I might be able to arrange some assistance." Lily wanted to argue to push downriver immediately, but reason prevailed. "One night," she agreed reluctantly. Fisher nodded in satisfaction. "I'll arrange rooms for you both at the boarding house. It's clean and the owner is discreet." As they left Fisher's office, the afternoon sun was beginning its descent toward the horizon. The settlement bustled with activity, traders and farmers going about their business, unaware of the dangerous currents running beneath the surface of their peaceful community. Owen walked beside Lily, close enough that his arm occasionally brushed against hers, a reminder of his presence that she found surprisingly comforting. "Are you sure about this?" he asked quietly as they made their way toward the boarding house. "Once we start down this path, there's no turning back." Lily paused, looking up at him with determined eyes. My father taught me never to run from a fight worth fighting. If Rains had anything to do with his death, if he's threatening the livelihood my father built, then yes, I'm sure. Owen nodded, a new respect evident in his gaze. Then we'll face it together. The boarding house was a 2-story white clapboard building with green shutters and a wide porch. The proprietress, Mrs. Holloway, was a plump, cheerful widow who showed them to their rooms with minimal fuss after Fisher had spoken with her. "Dinner's at 6, she informed them. "Nothing fancy, but it's hot and plentiful." Lily's room was small but clean, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a chair by the window that overlooked the main street. After the constant movement of the river, the stillness felt strange, almost unsettling. She washed away the dust of travel and changed into her spare dress before heading downstairs for dinner. Owen was already seated at a small table in the dining room, his back to the wall and a clear view of the door, the habit of a man accustomed to watching for trouble. He stood as she approached, pulling out her chair in a gesture of gentlemanly courtesy that surprised her. "You clean up well, Mr. Blackett," she observed as she took her seat. He'd clearly made use of the wash basin himself, his face freshly shaved and his dark hair still damp. He'd changed into a clean shirt, though his trail-worn vest and the gun belt slung over the back of his chair remained. "As do you, Miss Morgan," he replied with a small smile. "Mrs. Holloway brought them plates heaped with roast beef, potatoes, and fresh bread, a feast compared to the simple fare they'd had on the boat. For a while they ate in companionable silence, each lost in their own thoughts about the challenges that lay ahead. "May I ask you something?" Lily finally said, breaking the silence. Owen looked up, those blue eyes meeting hers across the table. "Of course. You said you had your own reasons for wanting to meet Rains. What are they?" Owen set down his fork, his expression growing serious. 2 years ago, I was working as a deputy marshal in Missouri. Rains was running guns through our territory, selling them to anyone with coin outlaws, Indian renegades. Didn't matter to him. We were closing in on his operation when my partner and I were ambushed." He paused, and Lily could see the shadow of old pain cross his face. "My partner didn't survive. Shot in the back while we were checking an abandoned warehouse. I tracked the shooter for 3 days but lost him at the river. Later found out he was one of Rains' men. By the time I recovered enough to resume the investigation, Rains had disappeared." "I'm sorry about your partner," Lily said softly. "He was a good man, had a wife and 2 young children." Owen's jaw tightened. "I promised his widow I'd find the men responsible." "Is that why you're headed to New Orleans?" "You heard Rains was operating on the river," Owen nodded. "Got word from an informant about a month ago. Been tracking him since, gathering evidence. When I saw those pirates coming after your boat, I didn't make the connection immediately. But when Fisher mentioned Rains, things started falling into place. So we both have scores to settle with this man," Lily observed. "It seems we do." Owen studied her face for a moment. "Does that change your mind about proceeding?" Lily shook her head firmly. "If anything, it strengthens my resolve. Rains has hurt too many people. He needs to be stopped." Something shifted in Owen's expression, then a softening around the eyes, a warmth that hadn't been there before. "You're an extraordinary woman, Lily Morgan." It was the first time he'd used her first name, and the intimacy of it sent an unexpected flutter through her chest. Before she could respond, however, the dining room door opened, and Fisher entered, accompanied by 2 men Lily didn't recognize. "Evening," Fisher greeted them, approaching their table. "Mind if we join you?" Owen gestured to the empty chairs, his posture once again alert and watchful. "This is Samuel Thornton and James Cooper," Fisher introduced the men. They've had their own troubles with Rains and are willing to help. Thornton was a burly man with a thick beard and calloused hands that spoke of years of hard labor. Cooper was leaner, younger, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Fisher tells us you're going after Rains," Thornton said without preamble. "That true?" "We're gathering information," Owen replied cautiously. "Why are you interested? Rains' men burned my sawmill last winter when I refused to pay their protection fees," Thornton growled. "Lost everything I'd built over 10 years. "And they hijacked my supply boat 2 months back," Cooper added. "Shot my brother when he tried to stop them. He survived, but he'll never walk right again." Owen and Lily exchanged glances. It seemed Rains had made more enemies than they'd realized. "What exactly are you proposing?" Lily asked. Fisher leaned forward, lowering his voice. "These men aren't the only ones Rains has wronged. There's a growing number of folks up and down the river who have suffered at his hands. What they lack is someone to organize them, to stand up to him." "And you think that's us?" Owen raised an eyebrow. "I think you have the skills and the motivation," Fisher replied. "Thornton here has 5 men who'll stand with him. Cooper has 3 more. With you two, that makes 11 against Rains' dozen or so. Still not great odds," Owen observed. "Better than the 2 of you going alone," Thornton countered. Owen couldn't argue with that logic. "What's your plan?" "Rains has a shipment coming in tomorrow night," Cooper explained. "Contraband from New Orleans weapons mostly, from what we've heard. He'll be meeting the delivery personally at his compound." "How do you know this?" Lily asked suspiciously. Cooper grimaced. "One of his men drinks too much, talks even more when he's in his cups, been feeding him whiskey and listening for weeks." "So we catch him with the illegal goods," Owen reasoned. "Then what? There's no law to speak of out here." "There's a federal marshal in Cairo," Fisher said. "I've sent word to him about our suspicions regarding Rains. If we can gather solid evidence of his illegal activities, the marshal has promised to come with a proper posse." "That could take days," Lily pointed out. "Which is why we need to capture Rains and hold him until the marshal arrives," Thornton added. "With him in custody and evidence of his crimes, his men will likely scatter." Owen considered the plan, clearly finding merit in it despite its risks. "We'd need to scout his compound first, learn its layout, determine where he keeps his men stationed." Cooper nodded eagerly. "Already done. I've been watching the place for weeks. Have a rough map drawn up and everything." "Let me see it," Owen requested. Cooper produced a folded piece of paper from his pocket, spreading it on the table. The drawing was crude but detailed enough to show the main buildings of Rains' compound, a large house, several outbuildings, and a boathouse on the river. "Guards posted here, here, and here," Cooper indicated. "Main shipments come in through the boathouse. Rains keeps his personal quarters in the main house, 2nd floor." Owen studied the map intently, his experienced eye noting defensive positions and potential approaches. "If we time it right, catch them during the shipment when they're distracted." "We could take them by surprise," Thornton finished. Lily had been quiet, examining the map herself. "The river approaches would be heavily guarded," she observed. "But what about from upstream? The Wandering Rose is small enough to navigate close to shore, especially at night." Owen looked at her with newfound appreciation. "You're suggesting we use your boat as a Trojan horse." "I'm suggesting we use every advantage we have," she replied steadily. "They've already seen my boat. They wouldn't necessarily expect it to be a threat." The men exchanged glances, clearly impressed by her thinking. "It could work," Cooper admitted. "Their attention would be on the shipment coming upriver from New Orleans. They might not watch the northern approach as carefully." "It's still incredibly risky," Owen cautioned, his eyes on Lily. "You'd be putting yourself and your boat in danger." My boat is already in danger as long as Rains wants it, she countered. And I'm not sitting safely on shore while others risk their lives. Owen held her gaze for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right. We approach from the north after dark tomorrow. Cooper, you and your men create a diversion from the east. Thornton, your group takes the western approach. We coordinate our timing to hit when the shipment arrives. And Rains? Fisher asked. He's mine, Owen stated, his voice leaving no room for argument. The others nodded in silent agreement. They spent the next hour refining the plan, discussing signals and fallback positions. By the time they dispersed for the night, a sense of nervous anticipation had settled over the group. Tomorrow would bring either justice or disaster, perhaps both. As Lily and Owen walked back upstairs to their rooms, she could feel the weight of what they were planning pressing down on her shoulders. Having second thoughts? Owen asked quietly, reading her expression. No, she answered honestly. Just understanding the gravity of what we're undertaking. People could die tomorrow. Yes, he acknowledged, but people have already died because of Rains. Sometimes standing by is more dangerous than taking action. They paused outside her door. In the dim light of the hallway lamp, Owen's face was half in shadow, but his eyes remained clear and focused on hers. Whatever happens tomorrow, he said softly, I want you to know that meeting you has been unexpected, in the best possible way. Lily felt warmth spreading through her chest at his words. For me as well, Mr. Blackett. Owen, he corrected gently. After tomorrow, I think we'll have earned the right to first names, don't you? She smiled at that. Owen, then, good night. Good night, Lily, he replied, lingering for just a moment before turning toward his own room. Lily closed her door behind her, leaning against it as her heart raced in a way that had nothing to do with fear. In the midst of danger and uncertainty, something else was blossoming, something she hadn't anticipated when a stranger with a rifle had scared off river pirates just a day ago. Morning came too quickly, the first rays of sunlight filtering through the thin curtains of Lily's room. She'd slept fitfully, her mind cycling through all the possible outcomes of their plan. Rising, she dressed in practical clothes, trousers beneath her skirt that would allow for movement if needed, a sturdy blouse and boots that had seen many miles of river travel. Her father's pistol was cleaned and loaded, tucked into a pocket specially sewn into her skirt. Owen was already downstairs when she descended, deep in conversation with Cooper over coffee. He looked up as she entered, his eyes taking in her practical attire with approval. Ready? He asked simply. As I'll ever be, she replied, accepting the cup of coffee Mrs. Holloway offered her. The morning was spent in final preparations. Fisher provided additional ammunition for their weapons and supplies for the journey. Thornton and his men checked and rechecked their equipment, while Cooper finalized the timing of their approach based on his knowledge of Rains' compound. By midday, they were ready to depart. The wandering Rose would leave first, making its way downriver as if on a normal trading journey. Thornton and Cooper's men would travel separately by land, meeting at designated points near Rains' compound. The attack would commence at dusk, when the shipment from New Orleans was expected to arrive. As Lily prepared to board her boat, Owen pulled her aside for a private word. Once we're on the river, there's no turning back, he reminded her. If you want to change your mind, now's the time. Lily appreciated his concern but shook her head firmly. My mind is made up. This is about more than just my boat now. It's about justice for my father, for your partner, for all the others Rains has hurt. Owen's expression softened. Just stay close to me when things get dangerous. I couldn't bear it if something happened to you. The simple admission made Lily's breath catch. There was genuine concern in his eyes, perhaps even something deeper that neither of them was ready to name. "The same goes for you," she replied softly. "I've grown rather accustomed to having you around." A smile briefly lightened his serious expression. "Then we'll watch out for each other." With that understanding between them, they boarded the wandering Rose and cast off from the dock. Fisher stood watching them depart, raising a hand in farewell and good luck. The journey downriver was tense but uneventful. Lily guided the boat with practiced skill while Owen kept watch for any sign of Rain's men. They spoke little, each lost in their own thoughts about what lay ahead. As the afternoon waned, the landscape began to change. The settled farmlands gave way to wilder, less inhabited terrain. The river narrowed in places, forcing Lily to navigate more carefully. By late afternoon, they could see the first signs of Rain's territory, occasional guards posted along the shoreline, watching the river traffic. "We're getting close," Owen murmured, keeping his profile low as they passed one such sentry. "Another hour at most." Lily nodded, her hands steady on the wheel despite the anxiety churning in her stomach. "We should anchor soon, wait for full dark before making our final approach." They found a small cove upstream from Rain's compound, hidden from the main channel by a bend in the river and a stand of towering cypress trees. There, they anchored the wandering Rose and waited as the sun began its descent toward the horizon. Owen used the time to check his weapons one last time, the rifle that had saved Lily from the pirates, and a pair of revolvers holstered at his hips. Lily likewise examined her father's pistol, its familiar weight both a comfort and a reminder of why she was here. "My father always said a river teaches you patience," Lily remarked as they sat on the deck, watching the sky turn from blue to gold to crimson. "Waiting for the current to shift, for storms to pass, for the right moment to navigate a difficult passage." Owen smiled at that. "Wise man, your father." "He would have liked you," she said softly. "He always respected people who stood up for what's right, no matter the cost. I wish I could have met him." Owen's voice was gentle. "From everything you've said, he raised an extraordinary daughter." Lily felt a blush warming her cheeks and was grateful for the fading light that hid it. "What about your family?" she asked. "You mentioned business in New Orleans." Owen's expression grew distant. "My younger sister lives there with her husband. She's been after me to visit for years." Finally decided it was time. "But first Rains," Lily understood. "First Rains," he agreed. "Some debts need to be settled before new beginnings can start." There was something in the way he said "new beginnings" that made Lily wonder if he was thinking beyond tomorrow, beyond Rains. Before she could pursue that thought, the light had faded enough that it was time to prepare for their approach. They moved silently about the deck, dousing all lanterns and securing anything that might make noise. Owen helped Lily don a dark coat over her lighter clothing to make her less visible in the night. Then, with practiced hands, she raised the anchor and guided the wandering Rose back into the current. The river was different at night, darker, more mysterious, with shadows that seemed to move and breathe along the shoreline. Lily navigated by starlight and memory, keeping the boat close to the eastern bank where the shadows were deepest. Owen stood beside her, rifle ready, his eyes constantly scanning for danger. As they rounded a final bend in the river, Rain's compound came into view, a collection of buildings set back from the shoreline, with a large boathouse extending out over the water. Lanterns burned at strategic points, illuminating the paths between buildings but creating deeper shadows beyond their reach. They could see movement, men carrying crates from the boathouse to the main house, others standing guard with rifles. And there, on a balcony overlooking the river, stood a figure that Owen identified in a tense whisper. Rains. Even from a distance, Lily could make out his distinctive appearance, tall and lean, with a shock of white blonde hair that caught the lantern light. He was dressed more elegantly than his men, in a tailored coat and waistcoat, looking more like a successful businessman than a river pirate. The shipment must have arrived early, Owen observed, noting the activity around the boathouse. We need to signal Cooper and Thornton. Their plan had included a simple signal, 3 quick flashes from a covered lantern, visible only to those watching for it from the designated meeting points. Owen prepared the lantern while Lily guided the boat into position, using the current to drift them closer to the compound, without the telltale sound of oars or engine. As they neared the northern edge of Rain's property, Owen carefully lifted the lantern's cover 3 times in quick succession, sending the signal to their allies waiting in the woods. Now, everything depended on timing and luck. They secured the wandering rose to a fallen tree that extended into the water, its massive trunk providing both a mooring point and cover from casual observation. Then, with weapons ready, they slipped over the side into the shallow water near the bank. "Stay close," Owen whispered, helping Lily up the muddy bank. "We wait for Cooper's diversion, then make our move toward the main house." They crouched in the undergrowth, every sense alert. The minutes stretched endlessly as they watched the activity in the compound. Men continued to move crates from the boathouse while Rains supervised from his balcony, occasionally calling out orders that carried faintly across the water. Suddenly, a commotion erupted from the eastern side of the compound, shouts followed by gunfire. Cooper's diversion had begun. As planned, many of Rain's men rushed toward the disturbance, leaving the western approach less guarded. "Now," Owen urged, and they moved swiftly through the shadows toward the main house. They had covered half the distance when a second eruption of gunfire, this time from the west, signaled that Thornton and his men had joined the fight. The compound was now in chaos, men shouting contradictory orders as they tried to respond to attacks from multiple directions. On the balcony, Rains was no longer visible. He had retreated inside, likely to secure his valuable shipment or perhaps to prepare for escape. Owen and Lily reached the side of the main house without being spotted, pressing themselves against the wooden siding as gunfire continued to echo around the compound. A side door stood just ahead, guarded by a single man who was nervously dividing his attention between his post and the commotion elsewhere. "I'll take him," Owen whispered. "You cover me." Before Lily could respond, he had slipped away, moving with the silent grace of a predator. She raised her pistol, ready to provide covering fire if needed, but Owen's approach was so stealthy that the guard never saw him coming. A quick blow to the head, and the man crumpled silently to the ground. Owen beckoned Lily forward, and together they entered the house, finding themselves in a dimly lit hallway. The sounds of fighting outside seemed muffled here, creating an eerie contrast to the elegant furnishings visible in the rooms they passed. Rains will be either securing his valuables or preparing to flee, Owen reasoned in a whisper. Either way, he'll be upstairs. They found the main staircase and ascended carefully, alert for any sound that might indicate they weren't alone. The upper floor was arranged around a central hallway, with doors leading off to various rooms. Light spilled from beneath one door at the far end, the master bedroom, according to Cooper's crude map. They approached silently, Owen taking the lead with Lily just behind him. When they reached the door, he paused, listening to the sounds from within, drawers opening and closing, papers rustling, the unmistakable clicks of a gun being loaded. Owen met Lily's eyes, silently counting down from 3 with his fingers. On 1, he kicked the door open and surged into the room, rifle raised. "Hello, Rains," he said coldly. "Remember me?" Victor Raines stood beside an ornate desk, a small derringer in one hand and a leather satchel in the other. His pale blue eyes widened momentarily in shock before narrowing in calculation. "Deputy Blackett," he said smoothly, recovering his composure with remarkable speed. "What a surprise! I heard you'd left the Marshal Service." "I did," Owen confirmed, keeping his rifle trained on Raines' chest. "But some promises don't expire with a badge." Lily stepped into the room beside him, her father's pistol held steadily in both hands. Raines' gaze shifted to her, and a flicker of recognition crossed his face. "Miss Morgan, I presume? I've heard much about your little boat. A shame your father isn't around to protect it anymore." The casual cruelty in his words made Lily's blood boil, but she kept her voice steady. "Did you have him killed, Raines?" A small smile played at the corners of his mouth. "Now, that would be telling, wouldn't it? Let's just say I remove obstacles to my business when necessary." Owen took a step forward, his expression dangerous. "Put the gun down, Raines. It's over. Your men are occupied with my friends outside, and the federal marshal is on his way with enough evidence to see you hang." Raines seemed unimpressed. "By the time any marshal arrives, I'll be long gone, and you'll both be dead." His eyes darted toward the window behind them. Now, too late, Owen realized the trap. The curtains billowed as a hidden figure lunged from behind them, one of Raines' men who had been concealed in the room all along. The man crashed into Owen, sending them both tumbling to the floor, the rifle skittering away across the polished wood. Lily spun to help, but Raines seized the opportunity, raising his derringer toward her. She dove to the side as he fired, the bullet splintering the doorframe where she had been standing an instant before. Owen grappled with his attacker, the two men locked in a desperate struggle. Raines moved toward the balcony doors, clearly intending to escape in the confusion. Lily scrambled to her feet, raising her pistol toward him. "Stop or I'll shoot," she commanded. Raines paused, eyeing her coldly. "You don't have the nerve, girl." "Try me," she replied, her finger tightening on the trigger. "You killed my father." Something in her eyes must have convinced him she meant business, because he slowly raised his hands, the empty derringer dangling from one finger. "Now, let's not be hasty. There's always room for negotiation." On the floor, Owen had gained the upper hand in his fight, delivering a powerful blow that left his attacker dazed. He rose to his feet, drawing one of his revolvers and training it on Raines. "No negotiations," he stated flatly. "You're going to face justice for all the lives you've destroyed." Outside, the gunfire had begun to subside, suggesting that one side or the other had gained the advantage. Raines seemed to be listening to this as well, perhaps gauging his chances. "My men will be here any moment," he said confidently. "You're outnumbered." "I wouldn't count on that," came a new voice from the doorway. They turned to see Cooper standing there, a bloody gash across his forehead but a triumphant smile on his face. "Your boys didn't put up much of a fight once they realized they were surrounded. Thornton's rounding them up now." Raines' composure finally cracked, his face contorting with fury. "You'll regret this," he spat. "All of you. I have connections you can't imagine." "Save it for the marshal," Owen advised, moving forward to secure Raines' hands behind his back with a length of rope Cooper provided. As they led Raines from the room, Lily paused by the desk, noticing a ledger lying open among scattered papers. She picked it up, quickly scanning the contents, detailed records of shipments, bribes paid to officials, and most damning of all, a list of obstacles removed. Her father's name was there, alongside a date that matched his sudden illness. "Owen," she called softly, holding up the ledger. "Evidence. For the marshal." He nodded in understanding, his eyes softening as he saw the pain in hers. "We've got him, Lily. He'll pay for what he did." They escorted Rains downstairs and out to the yard, where Thornton and his men had gathered the surviving members of Rains' crew. Some were wounded, but none seriously. Their fight had gone out of them once they realized they were outmatched. "Any casualties on our side?" Owen asked Cooper. "Two of Thornton's men took minor wounds. Everyone else is fine," Cooper reported. "We were lucky caught them by surprise, just like we planned." It would be morning before the federal marshal could arrive from Cairo, so they settled in for a long night of keeping watch over their prisoners. Rains was secured separately from his men in the boathouse, under the constant guard of Owen and Thornton's most trusted lieutenant. Lily found herself unable to rest despite the exhaustion of the day. The ledger with proof of her father's murder weighed heavily in her hands as she sat on the steps of the main house, watching the first hints of dawn lighten the eastern sky. She heard footsteps approaching and looked up to see Owen, his face showing signs of the long night but his eyes alert as ever. "You should try to get some sleep," he suggested gently, settling beside her on the steps. "I will soon," she promised. "It's just finding this, knowing for certain." She tapped the ledger lightly. Owen nodded in understanding. "Does it help, knowing?" Lily considered the question. "Yes and no. It confirms what I suspected, but it also makes it real in a way it wasn't before." She sighed, looking out toward the river where the wandering Rose was now docked alongside the other boats. "At least now I can move forward without wondering." "Forward to what?" Owen asked quietly. The question hung between them, laden with possibilities neither had dared to voice amid the danger and uncertainty of the past days. "I don't know exactly," she admitted. "Continue with the river trade, I suppose. It's all I know." Owen was silent for a moment, his gaze following hers to the river. "You know, I was thinking about what comes next for me too, after Rains, after fulfilling my promise to my partner's widow." "And what did you decide?" Lily asked, suddenly very aware of his proximity, of the warmth of his shoulder against hers in the cool morning air. "I decided that some journeys are worth continuing," he said softly, "if the company's right." Lily turned to face him, finding his blue eyes watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Are you proposing a partnership, Mr. Blackett?" A smile curved his lips. "Of sorts, to start with anyway." He reached out tentatively, his calloused fingers brushing a strand of hair from her face with surprising gentleness. "I've spent 2 years chasing ghosts and vengeance, Lily. Meeting you has reminded me there are better things to pursue." Before she could respond, a commotion from the direction of the river caught their attention. Several riders were approaching the federal marshal and his deputies, arriving earlier than expected. The next few hours passed in a flurry of activity. The marshal, a gruff, no-nonsense man named Harland, took charge of Rains and his men with efficient authority. The ledger Lily had discovered proved invaluable, providing the documentation needed to ensure Rains would face the full extent of the law. "He'll hang for this," Harland assured them after reviewing the evidence. "Too many dead, too many lives destroyed. The river will be safer with him gone." By midday, the prisoners had been secured for transport back to Cairo, where they would await trial. The marshal had promised to send word when justice was served, though all involved knew the legal process could take months. As the dust settled, and their allies began to disperse, Cooper to check on his wounded brother, Thornton, to begin rebuilding what Rains had destroyed, Lily and Owen found themselves once again aboard the wandering Rose, preparing to depart. "Where to now?" Lily asked as she untied the mooring ropes. "You mentioned New Orleans. Your sister is still waiting for that visit." Owen nodded, helping her prepare the boat for departure. "That she is, and it's a fine city, New Orleans, full of opportunity for a skilled riverboat captain and her partner." Lily smiled at his deliberate choice of words. Partner, is it? And what skills does this partner bring to the arrangement? Protection when needed, Owen replied, moving closer to her. Knowledge of the territories, connections in various settlements that could be good for trade. His voice softened. And a promise to never let you face dangers alone again. The sincerity in his eyes made her heart race. This man who had appeared so suddenly in her life had somehow become essential to it, a fixed point in a world that had seemed adrift since her father's death. That sounds like a fair arrangement, she agreed, her own voice barely above a whisper. Owen's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining as naturally as if they'd been doing it for years. There's something else I'd like to add to the partnership if you're amenable. And what might that be? Lily asked, though she thought she knew the answer from the way he was looking at her. Instead of replying with words, Owen leaned down, closing the distance between them. His lips met hers in a kiss that was gentle at first, then deepened as she responded, her free hand rising to rest against his chest where she could feel his heart beating as rapidly as her own. When they finally parted, he rested his forehead against hers, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. That's my proposal, Miss Morgan, a partnership in all things if you'll have me. I accept your terms, Mr. Blackett, she replied, her eyes shining with happiness that had seemed impossible just days ago. Though I think we may need to negotiate the details over time. Owen laughed, the sound rich and warm in the midday sun. I look forward to those negotiations. With their agreement sealed, Lily took her position at the wheel while Owen secured the last of their supplies. The wandering Rose pulled away from Rain's compound, turning its bow south toward New Orleans, and whatever adventures awaited them there. As the current caught them, carrying them smoothly downriver, Lily felt a sense of rightness settle over her. Her father's murderer would face justice, her boat was safe, and beside her stood a man who understood both her past and her hopes for the future. The river had always been her home, but now, with Owen by her side, it promised to be much more a path to new beginnings, to partnership, and perhaps, in time, to a love as deep and enduring as the Mississippi itself. Years later, when people spoke of the Wandering Rose and its captains, the auburn-haired woman with eyes like emeralds, and the tall man with the well-worn rifle who was never far from her side, they told of how they had built a thriving trade route from St. Louis to New Orleans, of their fairness in business and their fierceness in protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. Some tales mentioned their 3 children, who grew up on the river learning its moods and mysteries, just as their mother had before them. Others spoke of how they had helped dismantle what remained of Rain's criminal network, making the waterways safer for honest traders. But those who knew them best remembered simpler things, the way Owen's eyes always sought Lily first when entering a room, the sound of her laughter carrying across the water on summer evenings, the quiet moments at the wheel when they stood together watching the river unfold before them. Partners in all things, just as they had promised on that fateful day when justice had been served and new beginnings had become possible. And always, there was the Wandering Rose, carrying them forward through the currents of their lives, a testament to the love that had blossomed when a river pirate's threat had brought together a determined woman, and the cowboy whose rifle had made those pirates think twice.